Well, hello there. How are you? I hope your New Year's was really neat. We are down here in beautiful Fort Walton Beach, Florida, visiting the family. It's kind of cool. Check out my Instagram and you'll see all kinds of wonderful pictures. Okay? Okay. So, this week's parsha is the last parsha, Vayechi, the last parsha of Genesis. That's it. We're leaving Genesis and we're going into Shemot, which is Exodus, next week. Okay? So I want to do something after this, but first let's do the parsha of the week. God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. You've heard this. It's a common blessing, right? Well, it's interesting, this blessing, because after all, Jacob does what he had his mother do to him. With me? Okay. Remember Jacob and his wonderful tricks, right? He steals his brother he steals his birthright, right? His father, Isaac, ends up giving him Esau's birthright because Esau is technically like 30 seconds older than Jacob. But Jacob, in his conniving ways, remember that parsha? That was wonderful. Him and his mom figure out how to fool Isaac. So he gets the blessing, right? Well, when he's talking to Joseph, before he dies, Jacob is really old, and he's getting old, and he wants to give Joseph's sons his blessing, passed down. Okay? Now, what he does is he passes over his other sons, and he blesses the youngest son of Joseph, Ephraim, first. Now, Jacob's got Ephraim and Messiah, and Messiah, right? Okay, so what happens is the youngest son gets the blessing. Sound familiar? Yeah. Jacob is at his own, doing his own thing, but this time he's doing it with Joseph's kid. Okay? So, he gives his blessing, and just like, okay, for example, the younger son, in Genesis, this is a trend, right? The younger son is favored over the older. Isaac is born after Ishmael, yet Isaac is chosen to lead the Hebrews. Jacob is born after Esau, yet Jacob is chosen to lead the Hebrews. And now Ephraim is younger, and Ephraim receives Jacob's blessing so he can lead the Hebrews again. Okay? This isn't normal, by the way, because normal would be the eldest getting the blessing, right? So what comes around goes around. It's one big circular thing, right? Now, the death of Jacob. When Jacob dies, he wants to, before he dies, he tells his sons, don't let me die here in Egypt, okay? He says, send me back to my home in Canaan, okay? Promise me you won't let me die, well, you won't bury me here when I die, okay? So all his sons agree with that, especially Joseph. Because remember, Joseph is an Egyptian now. Okay, he's not a Hebrew, he's an Egyptian now. He's been adopted and he does everything like the Egyptians. Because remember, he got messed up by his brothers, and that was like 3 portions. Okay? So, um, Jacob is the last patriarch. Joseph doesn't become a patriarch. Why? Because Joseph is an Egyptian. See what's going on here? Now, Jacob dies and his sons take him there, especially Joseph. When Joseph dies, he wants to be buried as an Egyptian. And that's what happens. And this is where the last book of Genesis, this is where we end the story. Okay? Next week we'll do Shemot, which is Exodus. We'll meet Moses, and we'll see the Exodus story. Okay. Now that was that. I have to do some ranting here for a second. Okay. Lately, a bunch of politicians, I know they always do this, politicians and evangelists are always misquoting scripture. I know we're used to it, duh, right? But in particular, they keep messing up with Leviticus. They don't like gays because of Leviticus. They don't like foreigners. They don't like, especially people in the southern border. They keep quoting. Well, I want to quote something back to them. Okay, let's talk about Leviticus 19:3. You shall revere every man, his mother and his father, and keep my Sabbaths, because I am the Lord your God. Turn you not to idols, nor make yourselves molten gods. I am the Lord your God. Um, what else does it say? Bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. Oh, this is great. This one's a good one. 9. When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap to the very corners of your field, nor shall you gather the gleanings of your harvest. And you shall not glean your vineyard, nor shall you gather every grape of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and the stranger, for I am the Lord your God. So what is it saying? Treat the poor well. You don't have to go buy them a house or nothing. You don't have to have them home for dinner, but give them something. Okay, you've got a corner of your vineyard. Now what does that mean? It means give money to the poor. That means do tzedakah, do charity work. Okay, put them up in a shelter. Give them clothes. Don't treat them like, well, to quote the orange one, those dirty, filthy, drug-inhabited people coming across the southern border. Now that's real Christian. For that matter, it's nothing. Okay? Here it is in Leviticus. The same thing they quote against people. Okay? So here's another one. 11. You shall not steal, nor deal falsely, nor lie to one another. They're seating a congressman today. Yeah, that idiot up from New York. Hello? Okay? He campaigned on this kind of crap from the book of Leviticus, right? You shall not defraud your neighbor, nor rob him. The wages of he who is hired not remain with you all night until morning. In other words, pay your workers, pay people a decent amount of money, and pay them. Yeah, you know the guy in Mar-a-Lago down there in Florida? Yeah, listen up, dude, okay? All right, I'm getting looked at, which means I'm ranting. One more, and I'm done with this. You shall not curse the deaf, nor put a stumbling block before the blind, but shall fear your God. I am the Lord. Okay? In other words, don't go out of your way. Okay? Don't go out of your way to hurt somebody or to do something bad. Okay? So, sorry to rail, sorry to rant, but this is really getting on my nerves, and Congress is getting seated. Okay? We've got new people being seated, and a new Congress starting, and it doesn't look pretty, and they're using scripture, and of course they're using it wrong. Okay? Sorry about that. We'll go back to real programming next week when we do Shemot, when we start the book of Exodus. So, whenever we end a book, we say Hazak, Hazak, Benitz Hazak. Okay? That means, okay, Hazak, Hazak, Vechazak. That means read it, go with strength, and read it out loud. And be proud. Okay? I'll see you here next week for what? Torah Tuesday. Next Tuesday. Have a wonderful week. Peace out.